Welcome to the Throttle Cable. I'm Rob, and on this video I'm going to take you through my top 5 upgrades for the Porsche 996. Okay, so my number five for me is the H&R lowering springs that I put on the car. The stance of the car is just perfect to my eyes as to where it's ended up. It's right about X74 level in terms of its lowering, and it's not quite as low as the IBAC springs that you can put on these cars. IBAC takes it slightly under GT3 spec. I didn't want it quite that low because you'd be forever touching the ground, but for me it's perfect. The cost, it was about £750 all in. 260, 270 of that was for the springs itself. The rest was for the fitting. But of course, depending on how bad your good or bad your car is underneath, I should say, will depend on how long it took to get those new springs on the car. Also, you've got to make sure your shocks are good enough to take these springs as it stands, because if they're worn, there's no point putting nice new springs on very worn shockers. Otherwise, you end up feeling like you're on a pogo stick. But for me, bang for buck, that's a great start at number 5. Oh, number 4. So my number 4, I'm sat in them, it's my seats. Recaro SPG XLs or whatever flavour bucket seat your heart desires. For me, this is the best interior change I think I've made. The connection you get with the car, the feeling of being cosseted and comforted in the car is amazing. It inspires confidence when you're driving the car versus the old tombstone seats that were here, the leather seats where you were slip sliding all over the place as you were trying to drive. It's a big ticket item, make no mistake about it. A seat can easily run you to £1,000. Subframes and fittings, that can be another £250, maybe more. Yeah, it's an expensive project swapping these out. You've got to really give yourself £2,500 to get them in properly. But trust me, it is worth it because the difference in feel is amazing. I knew before I bought this car, because I was letting my GT3 go, that I wanted bucket seats in it because you just don't get the same feeling in standard seats. So yeah, number 4 for me, could have been higher, but the cost wise has just kept it where it is there. And with number 3, we're coming into the engine bay, and they're quite remarkable. RSS semi-solid engine mounts. I love these things. I think they are fan-dabby-dozer-tastic. Now, they're not cheap. They are £350. But they are beautiful. Look at them, they're lovely machining beautifulness of engine mount. It's a shame that one of them is just lost underneath the air filter on the other side, but they do great things to the car. They're easy to DIY, swap them in yourself, and not only do they stop that engine from sloshing left to right across the car as you're trying to drive the thing, but the difference it makes to the gear change is marvelous. It's the precision and how precise and how loveliness it is. It can't be understated. The ones I took out, the original Porsche ones, they'd done 65,000 miles at the time, so I don't think they were shot by any stretch of the imagination. But even so, swapping them to these, night and day, absolute night and day. Number 2, it would be wrong of me not to be in the car for this one, because number 2 is the glorious, glorious sound of the exhaust. And I couldn't be happier, I don't think, with the exhaust. I mean, it's the perfect combination of not being intrusive whilst you're just driving, while you're cruising around, but giving you a really lovely sound when you give it a little bit of a bootful. What is it? Well, I've got the Top Gears exhaust. It is the 200 cell crossover cats, so the ones that physically crossover, not an X-pipe. I went with that because it keeps the low down torque, whereas you can tend to lose a bit of that with an X-pipe. And I've also got the mild sports mufflers. You can go with their sports mufflers for the full sound, but when you're matching them up with 200 cell cats, you're sort of releasing sound at each step there, so I thought better to go with it. I just think it's a great combination. The exhaust tips, I've got the EP4110 Porsche big ovals, as we all know and love them, and the headers are still the standard stock 996 headers. All in all of that kit plus fitting is going to run you about £1,800. So it's not a cheap upgrade, but it is one that I think is probably one of the most beneficial for the whole experience of driving these cars, because it's not just about outright speed, it's all about the sound and the emotion of driving a car, which makes it fun. And yeah, buckets full once you've got these on. It's a really, really nice upgrade. Now, of course, the glory of the exhaust comes alive towards the top, let's say, of the rev range. And forgive me for opening the windows and probably making the sound quality awful, but to demonstrate said lovely noises, oh yes, oh yes. So what exactly is my number one? Well, you might be slightly surprised to understand when I walk towards these. It's not my beautiful wheels that I got made to spec, it's the brakes that sit behind them. So for me, this has been the best upgrade I think I've done to the car. It's still the standard calipers, but I've swapped out the disc for Sebro slotted discs. I've swapped out the pads for Carbotechnic XP8s, and I've swapped out the lines for braided HEL lines, and wow, it's night and day difference. And it's the same on the back too. Again, slotted Sebros. I've gone slotted because they deal with heat a hell of a lot better than drilled discs do, and I've gone with the XP8s because I've been used to them on my old Megane where I used to take on track, so I know just how mighty they are. Now, it's worth saying they do squeal. They squeal like a pig, and they also drop tons of dust. But not everything in life is all about the positives of not being dusty and not being squealy. I sound like a race car, I look like a race car, and more importantly, I stop like a race car with these bad boys. So yep, for me, that is a wrap. That is the top 5. Please, if you like it, like it. If you want to see more, subscribe to it, and hopefully I'll see you on another. Cheers.